to Play That Rock and Roll, a show that takes a look back at the albums and artists of the classic rock era. Today's episode will break down the tumultuous history of the rock group Van Halen. Van Halen has one of the most interesting and controversial stories in rock history. The band survived nasty breakups and ill-fated reunions with two high-profile lead singers. They topped the charts, earned critical success, but also found themselves in the center of one of classic rock's biggest debates. Sammy or Dave? Or that third guy, Gary Sharon.
Sammy Hagar is upset with me because he knows I'm better than he is.
Oh, really?
These guys are great, both Hagar and
We had a lot of
Roth.
fun together over the years.
They're great human beings,
Time to
but I'll
move
tell you,
on.
some of the stuff that comes out of their mouths is just beyond belief.
So let's take a look at the best and worst of both worlds and explore the full history of Van Halen. Hit it. Before we begin, I must point out that this will be a very opinion-driven episode, which will feature mostly, my opinion. So if you disagree with anything I say, and I imagine at some point you will, feel free to post a comment. I plan to tackle every major controversy in the band's history, and I will give my honest opinion and will do my best not to cop out on anything. But before all that, let's take a look at the band's history. In the early 70s, brothers Eddie and Alex Van Halen formed a band with bassist Mike Anthony and vocalist David Lee Roth. They performed mostly in clubs and backyard parties in and around LA until they were discovered by KISS bassist Gene Simmons in 1976.
I found Van Halen playing at a club in Los Angeles, flew them to New York, and produced about 15 songs, the tape of which I still have. And then within 6 months of that, they got signed to Warner's and everything was fine.
Simmons later opted out of any future involvement with Van Halen when he decided that, quote, they had no chance of making it. Shortly after, Van Halen recorded their first album and released it in 1978. Although it lacked a hit single, Van Halen 1 is widely considered one of the greatest debut albums for a rock band. And I agree. Runnin' with the Devil, Ain't Talking About Love, and Jamie's Cryin' are three of my favorite Van Halen songs. And this album also includes their cover of the Kinks' You Really Got Me. One of the few covers I consider to be just as good as the original. This album also features Eruption, one of Eddie's most accomplished instrumental pieces. Van Halen followed up this album almost immediately with Van Halen 2 in 1979. It features their first hit single, Dance the Night Away. It also features a song called DOA, not to be confused with Sammy Hagar's VOA, but we'll get to that later. Truth be told, I don't much care for this album. When I said I was going to be honest, I meant I was going to be brutally honest. I have a lot of opinions that are probably not going to be received well by die-hard Van Halen fans or even conventional classic rock fans. There are things I really like about Sammy, Dave, and the Van Halen brothers, but things I don't like as well, and I will explain what and why. But I can acknowledge that I'm probably in the minority for some of it, so I'll post a blasphemy counter for the times I imagine that I would outrage a die-hard Van Halen fan, and to acknowledge that I'm not even trying to speak for popular opinion. So when I say I think Van Halen 2 is largely overrated, this will keep me in check. The band's next album, 1980's Women and Children First, was not as successful as Van Halen 2, as it only featured one single, And the Cradle Will Rock. The only other track worth mentioning is Everybody Wants Some. Other than that, I find this album to be rather forgettable. The next album was 1981's Fair Warning, which is a darker and more guitar-driven album than the previous two. I find it funny that even the critics who compliment this album can't find better words to describe it than dark, dirty, and nasty. And I can see why. However, I do really like this album, especially the instrumentals. And Unchained. That song is awesome. Now their next album, 1982's Diver Down, is less impressive. It's the one album that neither Roth or the Van Halen brothers feel all that strongly about. The album was rushed through production and features a number of covers, two of which are notable. The first being a synthy version of Dancing in the Streets, and the second being Roy Orbison's Oh Pretty Woman.
Don't make me cry, pretty woman. Don't walk away.
Besides those two covers, Diver Down is overloaded with filler, just like the last few albums. And it seems they were aware of it.
All right, says, look, any record that you're gonna go buy is only gonna have 3 or 4 good cuts on it to begin with, right? So all I did is trim off the flab and sell it to you for less.
Speaking from experience, Dave? I honestly think if Van Halen had merged Women and Children first with Van Halen 2 and put Pretty Woman and Dancing on the Streets on Fair Warning, the band could have had 3 amazing albums under their belt instead of 1 amazing album and 4 okay or bad ones. I feel the Roth-era Van Halen could be described as diamonds in the rough. Extremely good and innovative music surrounded by a number of lackluster tracks. That is until 1984. Van Halen's 1984 is easily one of their best records. A perfect mix of rock and pop. Guitars and synthesizers in just the right increments. With hits like Panama, Hot for Teacher, and Jump, 1984 is a masterpiece. The videos, all directed by Roth, are impressive in their own right. The music videos for the singles of 1984 are the perfect blend of the humor, fun, and onstage antics that made Van Halen MTV pop stars as well as rock gods. The album hit number 2 on the Billboard charts, and Jump was the band's first #1 single, but it would ultimately bring the band down. David Lee Roth was suffering from an extreme case of LVS, lead vocalist syndrome.
Being a lead singer, you have to believe you're semi-divine in order to do the gig. It's called the LV syndrome. That's the lead vocalist syndrome. It happens to all of them.
He decided to put out a solo EP and begin work on a film. He said he would, quote, maybe return to the band when it was complete. Dumbfounded, the brothers Van Halen told him they would not wait for him, nor serve as any backing band. And with that, it was over. The breakup was seemingly out of nowhere. Van Halen had always kept a healthy, united public image, so when they split, rumors started immediately. Let's address some of those, just to set the record straight. Number 1. Roth left because he hated Eddie's synthesizers. False. Roth denied this rumor himself and celebrated the band's use of them. Although, to be fair, he was apprehensive about adding them early on. Number 2. Roth left to make a movie.
And then 2 weeks later we read, well, no, Dave split to go be a movie star.
And Dave told us, I want to make a movie, I don't want to make a record. Then fine, you're an adult. You can make up your own mind, go ahead and do it, but don't leave the band hanging.
Partially true. Roth did begin work on a film, but it was never completed. He has since denied that he wanted to permanently leave the band because of this project.
That it's a lot of BS. It's a lot of excuses that are being peddled because these guys couldn't get off their butt and make a record.
Number 3. The Van Halen boys refused to work.
I remember sitting there for a lot of days because Mr. Fingers couldn't get out of bed for 4 days in a row. And I remember sitting for a number of days in a row because Mr. Sticks was driving across country with his new wife. And I wanted to make a record.
Presumably false. The brothers started looking for a new lead singer as soon as Roth left, and every Van Halen tour since then has been quite extensive. It is probably fair to say that after 6 albums and tours in 7 years, along with massive success, probably left the brothers fatigued and wanting a little vacation. Number 4. Everyone left terrified of Michael Anthony's booming popularity. That was never a rumor. Here's what really happened. After the monster success of 1984, Roth decided he was tired of sharing the spotlight with 3 other guys, who he felt, by all being married, were cramping his style. Starting a solo career would either get him away from them or force them to play by his rules all of the time. Meanwhile, the brothers Van Halen and Mike Anthony were sick and tired of Roth's spotlight-hogging antics in public and dictator-like domination behind the scenes. They also wanted to grow musically, but not in the direction that Roth wanted. This, combined with excessive drinking and drugs on all sides, is what truly brought the Roth era to an end. It's the quintessential band breakup story. Van Halen did not wait long to search for a new lead singer, and by the coincidence of having the same car mechanic, Eddie Van Halen found one in the Red rocker Sammy Hagar. By 1985, Sammy Hagar was an established solo artist. Starting in the mid-70s, Hagar had released 8 records in as many years. Hagar's albums were all somewhat successful, and he enjoyed pop success with singles like There's Only One Way to Rock, Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy, and his masterpiece, I Can't Drive 55. His song Heavy Metal was also featured in the cult classic animated movie of the same name. That's awesome.
My favorite song from my solo stuff early on, I gotta say, it's got to be Heavy Metal. I just love playing that song every night. It never get old.
When Eddie asked Hagar to join the band, he was at first apprehensive, but after jamming with the band for a while, he decided that the potential for great music was there. So in 1985, at Farm Aid 2, they made the announcement.
And we don't know any songs as a band, so we're just going to jam a couple songs that we all grew up on, okay? Let's go.
They started work on their first album with Hagar almost immediately, and released it in the spring of 1986, just 3 months before David Lee Roth's first LP release. Van Halen's 5150 hit number 1 on the Billboard charts, which was the first Van Halen or Sammy Hagar record ever to do so.
First of all, a while ago for making our album number 1, okay? That's the first number 1 for any of us.
It features 3 songs that are widely considered to be some of the best when it comes to the Hagar era. Why Can't This Be Love, Dreams, and Love Walks In all introduced the public to this new synth and ballad-based version of Van Halen. That awful line aside, I like 5150. Obviously, Van Halen wanted to evolve musically, and with Roth out of the picture, they did. And I think Sammy is great on this record. Whatever. Van Halen built its reputation on wild onstage antics, and the 1986 tour to support 5150 showcased that the band would still continue to earn it. Except now, without the use of assless chaps.
Ah, shut up.
All was right in the world of the new Van Halen, until...
Give me a bottle of anything, and a glazed donut. To go.